Tonight, we are honoring 3 individuals with the Roberta Roper Lifetime Achievement Award. In a year that How Would You Help has been the theme, these individuals have dedicated their lives to making positive impacts for victims of crimes, and MCVRC is proud to present them with these important awards. Up first, Maryland Congressman Glenn Ivey. His career of service was propelled, absolutely. His career of service was propelled when a stranger sexually assaulted a close friend. With a vision to make a positive impact, Congressman Ivey's career has demonstrated a profound commitment to upholding the rights of crime victims. He pushed to become a prosecutor, become a seasoned regulatory, trial, and appellate attorney, and his practice focused on civil litigation, white-collar criminal defense, congressional and grand jury investigations, regulatory matters, crisis management counseling, and internal corporate investigations. As a former state's attorney for Prince George's County, he met with scores of families, women, and children who were victims of violence and survivors of domestic or child abuse to help them through the criminal justice process and to obtain state and local resources to assist them in their most painful and poignant moments of need. He led significant reforms in the criminal justice system, including the introduction of police interrogation room cameras and initiatives to ensure transparency and accountability within the justice system. His tenure as a U.S. representative has continued his dedication to advocating for justice and reform. He looks forward to bringing in federal resources like VAWA and VOCA grants to assist organizations like MCVRC to help those in most need of help. Congressman Ivey understands victims' rights professionally and personally. His comprehensive approach to criminal justice includes a prevention and punishment balance, and he strives to continue to be a voice for victims, epitomizing MCVRC's mission and values. The impact that Glenn Ivey has had and is making for victims in Maryland is immeasurable, and MCVRC is proud to present him with this award.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I thought I had a pretty good resume, but it sounds even better when Sean's reading it, I must say. Can we have a big hand for Sean? I mean, I think it's really outstanding that she's here doing this, and because, you know, a lot of times people, you know, they're doing other things on a Saturday night, and she's standing up and stood with Joy, and a big hand for Joy, too. What an impressive figure. I want to say this. Where'd Ms. Roper go? Oh, right here. It's a little ironic, I think, that I'm receiving an award for a lifetime achievement with her standing here, because she's the one that has had such an extraordinary career and extraordinary lifetime achievement. When I was in law school, I went to law school in 1983, which these dates will kind of coincide, I think, with some of the dates in your life. And when I was in law school, we took criminal law, and we talked a little bit about how the criminal justice process worked from a victim standpoint, but really not much. In fact, there was derision directed at this victim rights stuff. Flash forward a few years, I graduate from law school, and Sean just told you about what led me to lead a decision to become a prosecutor. By 1990, I'd become a prosecutor in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C. And one of the first cases they gave me was a domestic violence case where the guy who was an engineer had beaten up his wife, and they were living with the parents, and the grandparents, and he'd beaten the grandfather and the grandmother into unconsciousness. And the photos that we presented in court, grandma had black eyes and the like. They survived. But after the conviction, in fact, Jolene, actually, you came. This is the guy you ran into in the witness room. She thought he was one of my witnesses, but he was the defendant. And I quickly grabbed her and pulled her away from the guy. But after the trial was over and the defendant was convicted, none of the family were permitted to testify in court at the sentencing hearing. This is 1990. Now, by that point, the victims' rights movement was starting to catch on. And I started teaching at the University of Maryland Law School in 1995. And in the first casebook I had, it was a little better than what I'd seen at Harvard, but not much. There were statutes that were being passed across the country, but they really hadn't made much headway. And that's around the same time I read, I want to say it was a Washington Post profile in the magazine, because I didn't know who she was. And I read the story about Stephanie and then Roberta and the organization that she'd started and the work that they'd started doing. And I realized that this is something that it was organic in Maryland. There were other parts of this around the country, but Maryland was really leading the charge in what was going on around the country. I stopped teaching after 20 years, and the last casebook I used had a section on victims' rights and had the statutes, and it talked about it not from a standpoint of derision, but from a standpoint of this is just the way the law ought to be. This is the way it is. Now, Victor, I know you're still fighting in court every day. You guys, congratulations on the Syed case. That was incredible. Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. But it wasn't lost on me that that case occurred in Maryland. And I think that in part, the judges reached the decision that they reached, and it was a 4-3 verdict, ruling, so it was close. But I think the fact that it was in Maryland and this organization and Mrs. Roper had done so much to lay the groundwork for it and create a sense of the importance of this and the necessity of it, and yes, the legality and constitutionality of it. So I want to thank Mrs. Roper. And by the way, she was such a great partner when I was state's attorney. Let me say it this way. I'm on the House Judiciary Committee, and we're in the minority. And so what we get a lot of is when the majority's trying to make a point about an issue, usually to attack the Biden-Harris administration. I'm not going to get political tonight. But they bring in victims of crime, survivors of crime, usually mothers, usually who've lost a child, late 20s, early 20s, late teens, something like that. They might have been killed they died because of a fentanyl overdose, or someone killed them who was an illegal immigrant in the country, or whatever political point they want to make. And as I watch these women testify, because it's always women, in fact, we did one where the chairman took us up to Philadelphia because he wanted to attack the DA in Philadelphia. And we did another one of those in Manhattan as well. And he brought in 3 victims of crime there, 3 survivors of crime, to do the same thing. And it occurred to me that even though the victims' rights movement has accomplished so much and come so far, and thank God for that it's the moment now of politicizing this is really tragic, because it's taking advantage of people and misusing their stories in a way that if they want to testify about whatever political thing they want to do, that's great. But the thing I always noticed about all of them was that they didn't have an organization like this one supporting them and backing them up. And Joy, when you said 39 years later, they're still with you, I guarantee that the people that brought them up to testify at those hearings will be nowhere to be found when they need help. Not even 39 years from now, I'll say 39 months from now. So thank God for you, the great work that you do. Joy, Pauline, all of you, keep up the great work. You're doing fantastic work. There's a quote from John Kennedy, on this earth, the Lord's work is truly our own. You are doing the Lord's work. Thank you, keep up the great work, and God bless you.